Hey everybody, we are back live at the Mead Truth right here at the train station. I got my main man Mark here.
Hey everybody, we're back. Yeah. Steve, we're finally back on. I know we were out for a couple of weeks, guys. Sorry about that. But you know, we got everybody's got life, and most of you we know listen to us on the recorded side anyway.
That's
so
all right.
So you'll pick us up. So with us tonight we have Mayor Claycomb from the city of Brandenburg. We're going to be talking to him about what's going on.
Welcome to the show, Mayor.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, we're glad to have you too. Yeah. We've been actually having a pretty good lineup lately. Our last episode we had Sidney Durham. There's the issue going on in the county about these roads that are private and trying to get them converted, and that's kind of a big scuttlebutt when you have so many years of deregulation or not enough regulation to make sure that the ducks are in a row.
Yeah, there's a. Speaking of people that we have coming on, we're working out some things for some of the candidates to come on.
That's right.
Over the next couple of months before the primary, so hopefully we'll hear from them. I've received texts today from a couple, so I'm looking forward to getting those scheduled and getting them on. And we're still trying to work out something to get back over to the chamber. We still want to go over and talk to Annie and the team, but now we're getting into their banquet and time and all that. So it'll probably have to be sometime in April, I would say. Before
and we did work out all of our bugs. The last episode we did, we have a full new live remote setup with it's like we're our own cameramen. As you see, Mayor, and here it's all like GoPros everywhere and microphones. It's almost like you're at a radio station. But
very impressive.
Yeah. So, but it really does go out well, and so your message today is going to be heard. Maybe
around the world.
Well, it's possible. I mean, we have people in Florida that listen and
absolutely
give us comments and things. So it's pretty good.
Yeah. So I know there's a lot to talk about. You had a lot of interesting things. I know we were talking about sidewalk projects. There's annexation update, and
I'm interested in that annexation update.
All right.
I don't know if that's where you want to start, but
where I wanted to start was just to say thank you for letting me be here.
Oh, hey,
and
our pleasure.
I appreciate it. And probably a disclaimer from me would be that if I mention someone's name and I forget to mention someone's name, that's not any type of implied criticism, because I'm not saying it to someone else's exclusion. It's just that I'm a tell it like it is. The truth's the truth.
Yeah, I mean it's tough that. In conversations nowadays, it's not like it's like if you mention, like you said, if you mention one person, it's almost like it's an implied.
You hurt my feelings.
Yeah, it's an implied, diss or what have you against somebody else, and it's like, well, you're in a flow of a conversation. We're not trying to leave anybody out.
That's really what this is about. I mean, some people get left out. We were misinterpreted one time. We were having a conversation trying to, some of these times we try to talk about the facts, but then we draw in some of our opinions, but we try to just stick to the facts. But we got misinterpreted a couple of times.
Or doesn't mean you're against.
No, that's right.
So, that's right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So
you mentioned something too. I was on a recent meeting. I was with Troy Koch. He started that new board for the animal control.
Absolutely.
Happened to be the chair of it. You said, is it your niece or your
my stepdaughter Jennifer Marshall is on that board.
Glad to have her on the board too.
Yeah.
I think she jumped on a committee right away too to help us out last night.
I think she was jumped or maybe pushed gently. So, anyway, she's on it.
I'll take all the help you can get. Anytime you got help, then you're not doing the work and they're doing the work to help you. Then that's even better.
It's what you call homework, Steve,
that's right?
That's
right. So, but having her on the team and all the other individuals that are there helping is amazing, because there are a lot of things. And I know you already hit me up about a park, dog park. Actually, that's a big request around here.
Well, it is, and as I said earlier when I was talking off camera to Mark, one of the things that's been so impressive about Judge Koch is when we met early on, and we were going through a list of things that are obviously very important, and Judge Koch stopped and said, now there's one other thing. There are lots of standards by which a community is judged, one of which is how we treat our pets.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, wow.
Mm-hmm. Kindest, friendly community in the nation. Yeah, all those things matter.
And so it's sort of the measure of the man. And anyway, it just, I found it, how refreshing.
Yeah, another thing I've heard a lot too about Troy, and I'll let Mark jump in, is he started off the meeting. He said, look, what's right is right and what's wrong is wrong.
Right.
What I want for Meade County is that we are doing it right. And that's why he put that board together. So, and he's carried that on almost everything he's been doing so far.
And he made it clear that he said, my viewpoint is from 35,000 feet.
Yeah.
And he's really uniquely positioned because he's not bound by local custom and lore and tradition. No disrespect to that.
Yeah.
But he says we've got to look long term.
That's right.
That's right. You know, because he's not, Meade County born and bred. He, I kind of liken that to whenever we put a project team together. You always have to have that person who's not familiar with the process that you're trying to change, because they ask all kinds of questions that somebody who's been in it forever doesn't ask anymore, because they've asked those questions years ago.
Right.
And now maybe it's time to ask those questions again.
Well, and as far as laying claim to be a native Meade County, my birth certificate says Amarillo, Texas. I'm obviously not a Texan, but I was born there.
Well, I grew up here in Meade County, but
Wichita Falls, Texas.
There you go.
Yeah, my birth certificate says Columbus, Ohio. So
well, I think
that's not my fault. That was mom and dad's fault.
That's right. There's a special category of Meade Counties, and that's people who choose Meade County to be their home. And I've always believed that. But no disrespect to native Meade Counties. I just can't lay claim to being part of that group.
Right.
So,
but I'm sure glad they let us in.
I am too. I am too. We moved here in 1963, and it's been such a positive experience to be part of the community. So
we were about 16 years later. We got here in 79.
Okay. I realize I'm dating myself. I'm old.
Yeah.
Maybe not as old as Methuselah, but old. So.
Don't feel bad. I dated myself a couple times this week when I was in a very important meeting, and I said, how many licks does it take to get to a Tootsie Pop? And somebody looked across the room and he said, there's only 2 people in this room that know that.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, go ahead.
Well, you all had asked about annexation.
Yeah.
And, there is... You're probably aware there's an effort underway, and there's a compromise been reached in Frankfort that will address the Kentucky Association of Counties has been very motivated by the fact that some cities, not Brandenburg, have been overly aggressive about annexing to the financial detriment of counties.
Right.
We're talking about municipal insurance premium tax and maybe in some jurisdictions occupational tax. And so I am so pleased that I've been in communication with Senator Meredith and Representative Tate.
Sure.
And they solicited lots of input. They solicited mine too. And they came up with a compromise. Senator Meredith sent me a copy of a compromise that will allow some checks and balances, but not take away annexation, because quite frankly, here in Brandenburg, and that's one of the things I wanted to use this forum for, along with other things, is to make it clear that the city of Brandenburg has no desire to force annex someone into the city. Mm-hmm. Someone that doesn't need us, doesn't want us. We'll pick a fight we'll probably lose.
Right.
But we'd like to use city utilities as an economic carrot to entice people who are touching the city border, which is a legal requirement, and say, if we could do this, would you be willing to be in the city? And that represents a unique opportunity for the city to grow. But I want folks to know that if they're neighbors of Brandenburg and they live nearby, at least for the time that I'm mayor, there is no intent to force ourselves on somebody who doesn't want or need us.
So if I was to try to break this down, I live in 40108.
Correct.
But I'm Brandenburg for the Postal Service.
No. Yeah.
But if I wanted the protection, the customs, and all of the derivatives of being a part of Brandenburg proper,
right,
I could choose to annex to Brandenburg, or optional or not optional.
It would only be optional if, and the magic words are contiguous, if your property touch the city,
okay,
then we could annex.
Okay.
There are 2 categories: involuntary, which is the forced, and there's statutory recourse for people to protest that.
Right.
And then there's voluntary, which is relatively easy. And so that's what our thrust is with the city, is to people that touch the town.
Right. So and as I visualize this, I'll try to put myself up on camera. So as I visualize this, it's right now Brandenburg is this big.
Okay.
If people that are bordering this circle right here agree to join in, then the circle goes out this wide.
Right.
And now if the people touching that circle agree to join in, the circle grows out that wide. Otherwise, if a city doesn't grow necessarily in population like that or by land mass, right?
Right.
Its only other choice is go vertical.
That's correct. That's correct.
And so the zip code may remain the same, but you might add a zip code because it goes vertical. But in that annexation, what you do allow is the ability for city utilities and city different benefits to come under the protection of that.
And I don't propose to be able to have the lens through statewide.
Sure.
But looking at it from a local perspective, it's really not a problem, because we reach out to people who, if you and Mark own property that touched the city boundaries and it had development potential, and I say, hey fellas, would you consider being in the city if we could get sewer to you? If sewer were an integral part of your business plan, and you say, yeah, we'd consider that.
Yeah.
All you've got to do is make a written request. We have an ordinance ready for the first time. Second time, it's official. Now, the compromise says that there has to be some caveats now. And one of the caveats is that you notify the fiscal court. So we have some annexation cases that are voluntarily pending. Now we're going to we think this bill will become law, and upon passage, as Senator Meredith shared with me. And so we will give the county notice, the 45 days, because if there is property in the annexed area that has insurance premiums, the municipal insurance tax will be diverted to the city. But the prize is the fact that anything's built in the city benefits the county, because we're all Meade Countyans. And I'm committed to respecting the rights of people who pay extra for the privilege of living in town, but what's best for our community is good for Brandenburg. And so I'm not territorial, and that's why Judge Koch and I have been able to work together, because we're all Meade Countyans. And when I talked to Judge Koch the first time, I said, you're my judge too, Judge.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily your mayor because you're not in incorporated limits.
That's right.
So, but we can't afford this, I'm only interested in what affects me.
Well, if I was a property owner, I'm just thinking business-wise. If I was a property owner right now, that I had a large mass of property that is bordering the city right now, I'm thinking even better than the big farm that that's out off of 313 or 60 for development. If I wanted that annexation, I would want it just to get that sewer line, because then I could go vertical with housing and development that would actually grow the community. Because we're going to grow. We're going to grow. Our population is supposed to grow by over 400 households or something like that as a result of, and I know we mentioned you got Nucor on here and jobs and Nucor. This feeds together. This goes back to Troy's campaign originally about infrastructure. The fact that you're taking on avenues to create opportunities for that growth to occur rapidly is a great initiative.
Well, under Mayor Joyner,
I'm just, that's my interpretation from the way you're describing it. Others may have an opposition to that because they feel like
I can talk to that a little bit, but go ahead.
Well, for example, on the property that is at the corner of what I call the Battletown Road and the bypass, Mayor Joyner gave me the okay last year to reach out to the owner.
Yep.
And I reached out to the owner, and he has 120 acres. Would you be interested in being in the city if we could get water and sewer to your property? We're not going to develop the interior of the property.
No, a developer can come in and do that.
But we have 120 acres that was voluntarily annexed into the city that represents tremendous growth potential, because one of the things that I have to deal with, the reality of it is that a good bit of Brandenburg, and I don't have any statistical data to back this statement up, but it's a true statement. If you look at Brandenburg, it is a large, small town.
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Half of town, I'll pull that number out that I can't really prove. If you think about schools, churches, governmental buildings, nonprofits, farm property that is over 10 acres that is entitled to legitimately and legally a farm exemption. So we have a significant part of our geographical area that pays no tax or limited tax. That's the hand that's dealt us. So we have to explore opportunities. If we don't explore those opportunities, and what we do is we put extraordinary burdens on our residents, and they say, "Hey, I've had enough. I'm out."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
Well, that's exactly. Yeah.
Go ahead, Mark.
So so that's why, right now you're reaching out to individuals.
Right.
Before you took office, there was I had heard the rumor that they were going to annex all the way out past us. We're about a mile off the bypass. And that was like, well, what am I going to get out of that?
A larger tax bill.
Yeah. I mean, I don't have sewers.
Right.
I mean, if we're going to run sewers out there, then maybe that's an option. But I already have a septic tank. I've already paid to have a septic tank, so I don't get that benefit of that.
Right.
I already have county water. Maybe my water bill will be a little bit cheaper or something because the city, I think Brandenburg City water is probably a little less.
Yeah.
But
What happened in the early 70s, no one, myself included, could have looked so far down the path as to have anticipated. And we didn't have a water district. And people that were close to town, developers said, "City, would you let us run the water line out to our property?" And then the city said yes, and then we'll charge 30% extra. Now, those areas that have city water, they have no legitimate reason to want to be in the city. They have their septic systems. They have their water. You could argue they have all the practical benefits of being in town. But the reality of it is, how do I ask someone, "Hey, I need a favor. Will you go show up at this special election and vote for this so the city can annex you?"
So I can pay you taxes.
Yes.
And
they say, "Well, will I get sewer?" No.
And I think that the people that the person, and I'm not going to name who I was talking to about this, but it was somebody who's it wasn't like the mayor or city council, but it was somebody who's kind of close to it that understands, that knew what was going on in city council, and they were trying to explain that like it was a good thing, and I'm like, it's a good thing only for the city, because if you're going now, like I said. They were talking. They said, "Well, you don't understand. The city needs to get this revenue." And I said, "I understand the city needs to get the revenue, but you can't just come take it from me. And you're not going to get anybody out here, out past this line, that's going to want it. And there might be some people a little bit closer to the city that say, okay, this works, but."
Right.
So I would say in the situation, if you left this just alone on the 120 acres, just now, right now, I'm thinking only the 120 acres.
Okay.
Left everybody else alone and didn't do anything else but work with that person. And then now we go talk to developers because we're laying pipe, right? You're talking about the comprehensive plan of Meade County getting launched probably 5 years faster than anything else. And you wouldn't even have to do anything else just with that 120 acres. You could put 400 homes on 120 at a half an acre lot.
Or less.
Or less.
Right.
And then your roads, your pathways, you're creating new roads. You've got, you could get one of those developers that it's a private community. Now you got Doe Valley competition. I don't know, but my thoughts are going crazy as a business.
Well, the interior development, as I said, 120 acres that will allow for R1 and R2. Single family and two family.
Yeah.
The front of that property is already in the city. It's commercial.
Yeah.
It represents tremendous potential now
for economic growth too.
Right. And every bit of that. Yes, the insurance premium tax.
But just stop for 1 second. Think 400 houses built.
Right.
I've seen military housing communities built in like less than 2 years, but you get the right developer.
Well, I mean, you have the development going on. That's mostly apartments and patio homes. Is that right? Over on
Old Ekron
Road, between Old Ekron and Old State Road.
But here's what I would say though.
Okay.
If you did that, you got the right developer. I would say though that we do need we need some of these single family homes to be affordable housing
For
though.
sure.
Because we've excluded a lot of our Meade County residents just because of their income levels and all that other stuff. Not everybody can afford. I mean, the housing market went nuts in the last couple of years, and I mean. some single family, low income, maybe making $50,000 a year, both family, husband, wife working and trying to put their kids through school, daycare.
Right.
250 is even probably top of the budget, especially the way the lending industry is.
Probably
today.
the baseline is more like 325. Of course, government can help, but government is not the answer. And really, the private sector has to see the viability of it from a profit standpoint.
Right.
But you're spot on, Steve, because not everyone can afford to pay, and we've seen as we wait for our revenues to increase.
Yeah.
Because of the massive investment Nucor made in our community. There are people that have benefited because before Nucor they had a home worth $250 and they just sold it for $425.
Yeah.
But now we see rent through the roof. We see prices through the roof.
Yeah.
And we have an obligation to try to do what we can from a government perspective to facilitate housing that's affordable to everyone. And I'm hoping that someone will embrace that and say, this manufactured community makes sense.
Yeah.
We can make a profit. We can meet a need because we don't need to, there are lots of people that cannot handle that kind of obligation.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'm kind of wondering if some of these RV lots don't convert.
Well,
I would hope not. I was about to say something about that. I was thinking that 120 acres, it's the same spot, I think, over by Battletown Road. You know what I always thought would have been very cool there was a Yogi Bear campground because you always want to camp during the fairgrounds. But to this point, it's a much better served purpose. I lived in an RV for 10 years moving around. My wife and I, God bless us, we've been married 14 years and we moved 9 times out of 14 years. So,
I'm thinking about now that the Nucor's exiting, the construction is exiting. Right. A lot of those are all open now.
Well, I think, what will happen, a couple of the parks were conditional uses.
Sure.
Provisions with our plan and zoning in town to say there's a special need, so therefore we will allow this.
Right.
One of the parks, the one behind the recycle center. Is actually zoned R3, so there would be an option for the owner, if there's a need, to convert that over to a mobile home park. There's a different set of rules as far as lot size, but
the electrical structure and infrastructure is in place to do a mobile home park.
You've got zoning that would facilitate that because I'm glad there was some flexibility that would allow for a Nucor type of situation to say, hey, these are special times.
That's right.
Old timers, not me, remember in Muldrow when everything was converted to apartment space when Camp Knox was booming.
Yes.
And that's why you have so many divisions of property and you see garages turned into duplexes from years ago.
Yeah.
So we have a modern version of that now. But it represents things that we can do without forcing the will of Brandenburg on people.
Yeah.
And it just makes all the difference in the world. And ultimately, the county's revenue will increase because one of the challenges I have as mayor, and there are several, is the fact that our short-term situation, our resources, our income is strained. We know, or I know, that over the long haul, that our income will outpace expenses as we grow.
Sure.
For those people that say, I liked it the way it was.
Listen, Mayor, I got to tell you, I've been preaching that for the last year and a half, talking about the comprehensive plan. I said, let's make this thing come true. It sounds like you're taking action.
Well, I'm not the gatekeeper of the status quo.
I understand. There sounds like there's a lot of people working together to try to achieve the same common goals.
Just as with Judge Koch, an acceptable answer does not include, well, that's why we've always done it that way.
No, that's not, that didn't even work for me.
That goes back to what I was saying earlier.
Right.
If you want to improve, we should be moving forward. If we're not improving and moving forward, then you're falling behind.
Definition
we can
of
either
insanity.
do it and shape it and have some influence, or we can just hang on and watch it happen, and then next generations can complain about how we abandon our responsibility.
Exactly. And our responsibility, what you're seeing right now is our responsibility.
It is. It's on our watch.
Yeah.
So,
and the only way to do this is to do the best we can with what we have.
That's right.
But always have that plan. Everything should be moving towards the end goal of making it better for the next generation. There was a time when we've talked about since I can remember. We need jobs. We need jobs in Meade County. We need jobs in Meade County.
Here you come.
And then I went to get my hair cut one time. I won't tell you.
I'm jealous. I wish I had some.
Well, we all end up there.
Life's not fair, Mark. Go ahead.
So I went into I was sitting in the barber chair. This is the wrong thing to do at the wrong time anyway, is to argue with your barber. But I was sitting there and they were talking about, they didn't, she said, I don't want new business in Meade County, and I said, I said, forgive me. I said, but that's because you have a job in Meade County. Right. The rest of us are going 35, 40 miles out of town on average, and spending an hour in a car to go to work.
Well, I can tell you that I'm in a men's group at E-Town at Southeast Christian on Thursday mornings. I'm an early riser, and I had no excuse for not going to something that started at 6:30. But it's awesome to see more people coming into Meade County that time of morning than going out. For years, I've heard, we need jobs. We need good jobs so our young people don't have to leave. Now we have 430 teammates, as Nucor calls them.
Yeah.
We'll have another 70 to 100 permanent contractors. And I'm sure
and that's before you get into the other businesses that have come in.
Right. And I realize that if you wound the clock back to 1950, that's actually a little before my time, fellas.
Yeah.
There were people that had anxiety over this Matheson Chemical Company coming in. But my goodness, I think about people who work there who raised their families. They paid for their homes. Some of them bought farms.
Shop at Best Buy. Just kidding.
Yeah. Or Save-A-Lot.
Or Save-A-Lot.
One of my favorite stores.
Cox's, my favorite.
So anyway,
Free plugs.
They did all these things. And what excuse do we have to say we don't need that or we don't want that?
Oh, my Lord, no. Not at this point. So I want to go into that and make a transition with that traffic coming into Meade County.
Right.
That safety corridor on the bypass.
Right.
So you bring up a great point in your talking points. And the reason why I want to talk about this is because this actually happened to me yesterday. Right. They are flying in on the bypass. I made a right turn on red. It was early morning at where 1638 meets the bypass.
Right.
There's 2 lanes there. Clearly had a gap in the right turning lane. Well, I pull out. I'm accelerating.
Right here.
Yeah, right up here. Right. I accelerate to the flow of traffic. Next thing I know, this guy is hammering up on me. Right. Doesn't want to slow down at 80 miles an hour. Goes to my left. I'm finally accelerated up to about the 55. He slows back down or whatever because that next light is his right turn to go to. This guy's pulling a trailer empty. And as I get over to the left lane, because I'm coming up to church, this guy's rolling up to me, rolling down the window because I pulled out in front of him. And I'm like, I didn't pull out in front of you. I had the proper amount of space. And technically, based on the distance you were, if you were doing that speed limit that is posted, you wouldn't have been coming up on me that quick and gotten offended. But that corridor, I want to hear about that.
The bypass corridor is a problem. And I was at a meeting that is a technical advisory meeting at E-Town, and I don't fully understand all the hierarchy. I'm learning, but the bottom line was I went into that meeting. Judge Koch couldn't be there. We had 2 out of 11 projects that were approved for federal funding. The other 9 were obviously Hardin County and Blue Oval. What we had was, number 1, we had 313 being widened from the Hardin County line to Highway 60. We had phase 1 of Kentucky 79. And when I left there, we had 4 projects. The state had said, we're going to use our sponsorship for a study and a plan of action for the bypass safety corridor. I wish I could take credit for it, but they said, we're going to do that. Now, the next thing that I did do, and I'll take a little bit of credit for, is I was unapologetic about asking for phase 2 of Kentucky 79. I said, quite frankly, there could be enough white crosses put on that road. My daughter lives on that road.
Yeah.
So when I left there,
narrow and
we have, the county and we have 4 projects out of 11 that are being bumped up to the next tier as it goes toward federal funding.
Sure.
And it was just, as I shared with Judge Koch, it was just phenomenal because what I tried to explain to our Hardin County counterparts is that their focus is on their area.
Yeah.
That's their obligation.
We have the largest growth in the state going on right now.
But here's the reality. We have shared interest because our Hardin County friends and neighbors, they're very much interested in how traffic flows quickly and efficiently to I-64. So in the interim, the state is going to do a study to consider a request that I made that we transition at the traffic light at 933 and 313 to a 45-mile-an-hour zone, just to look into it.
Okay.
As you go into town, they're going to study the real high risk is, in fact, from the intersection of Kentucky 448, which we call Broadway in town, from there to Old Working Road. And 70%, they did the traffic study. In the last 5 years, there have been 150 accidents on the entirety of the bypass. Over 70% occurred at
Now,
traffic
when you say
signals.
the bypass now starts at
We'll say at the bridge,
at the
Ohio River Bridge,
and coming back this way
all the way. And I think they were talking about all the way to 933 intersection, but I may be wrong about that. But 150 accidents in 5 years, 70% or more occurred at traffic signals in this area that we're so focused on, from the intersection of 448 and Broadway down to Old Working Road, and then you get on past it. You've got the VFW Club on the left, and you have the Huddle House and others. Yeah. Well, they're on the left, and it's on the right.
Right.
That is the area that is causing the concern. And one thing, and the state has been so helpful. They wanted people to realize that a traffic signal is probably a knee-jerk reaction, but it is not. And of course, driver distraction is the overwhelming issue. I would, not that I want people to be paying fines. I wish that I could have our city police go out there and turn that into an enforcement zone. But the cure would be worse than the problem, because there's no place to pull anybody over.
That's right.
That's right.
At the speeds they're flying down the road too.
Absolutely, because there are a good many folks that think speed limits are just suggestions. You know, if it suits you, would you drive 55?
I have nothing to say about that.
I plead the fifth.
I plead the fifth on that myself.
Depends on the situation. And
it's amusing to me that as through the years I've gone toward Muldrow and trying to drive the speed limit, which the Lord knows I don't know.
It's difficult.
It's difficult.
It's difficult.
But someone who's honking and impatient and maybe waving with just one finger.
I want to slow down.
Waving with just one finger.
Sure.
They pass me. They take their life in their own hands. We get to the stoplight at Muldrow.
We're both there at the same time.
Yeah, and I'm just tooling up behind them.
That's funny.
I have a theory on that. I'll share it with off the air. So
but anyway.
That's fantastic. So I was my humor, right? Bear with me as I throw this in. I freak out every time I come up to your Broadway road. That traffic light that's like 4 long, when the winds are blowing, that sucker's doing this back and forth. Hold on, let me show you on camera. But it's doing like this back and forth. I'm waiting for it to go like this, fly off, come through my windshield. And I'm like, couldn't they have done the bottom cable across so that it doesn't, maybe a little bit of this, but not this thing?
It's unsightly.
Oh, it's scary as heck.
It's unsightly to have the second cable, though.
The problem is...
Stop. Oh, my gosh, really?
The problem is compounded by the fact that we have businesses that access the bypass, talking about urgent care, Taco Bell, KFC, Burger King. They've got traffic trying to get out, and you're taking your life in your own hands if you come out of there.
Trying to make a left-hand turn.
And how many places is that true along the bypass?
Yeah, we brought this up with Troy. We talked about this. Why didn't they take the access roads? It's on the back, right? You're from Texas. Access roads are fantastic, right? And then bring you up to one of the intersections so that you could safely enter and exit from a traffic light. Not add another traffic light. No. Continue the access road so you can get up to and have a new
Broadway,
entry. Right.
From Broadway all the way up, negotiate with Kroger to move it on out through Kroger and out at that light.
I will tell you that David Pace is heading up an effort to deal with the businesses that I find myself in a position of saying, I know your road is all to pieces, but it's a private road. I don't want to be the first mayor to be indicted and go to jail. We've got that issue, but yet they're paying taxes. We have a developer, and it pains me to have to say, owner, we cannot let somebody buy into this problem. You own 10 acres that we would love to see you develop. But until the issue of how to get in and out of that property, and there may be an option, we're in the early phases, but I don't have the patience to wait
10 years.
People to get to the right place. An outlet that would come out of that property onto Broadway so that you would have an option if you come out. Now, I know that would put you into the area where the schools are, but we've got to have a solution. And I hate to be in a position, I consider myself to be progressive and old. I know what I am.
That's all right.
But it pains me to say we can't do anything else. But that's the reality.
Well, that's politics too. But speaking of that, this was, Troy campaigned on a lot of that too. He talked about that and the infrastructure. I mean, really, we're going to plant this and not take care of create the traffic pattern. Well, but speaking of that, you're talking about things that are important. They were part of Troy's campaign. How is your relationship with Troy?
It is
in these types of issues to get that support bilateral. You know what I mean?
I will tell you this, and I think Judge Koch would concur, and I don't mean this as any disrespect to anybody else, because we're all standing on the shoulders of people that came before us.
You're in the position to rock and roll right now.
But it has been phenomenal.
Good.
It is everything that I could have asked for, and already I can tell you on little things like downtown at the river, where we had a fantastic quote to take out that old sewer plant.
Yeah.
And the county says, we'll supply the dump trucks. As a matter of fact, we need that out for our new site on Mormon Road. When we're trying to upgrade, and we have our zoning maps. Yeah. And I do some appraisal work for the bank the Meade County Bank in the aftermath of my retirement. Even before I was mayor, I'd call down and say, ladies, I'm sorry to bother you, but would you go around the corner and look at the map and tell me how this property's zoned? You couldn't tell on the website.
That's right.
Judge Koch tells Tom Bridge, go down there and help them any way you can.
Yeah.
And so if I can return the favor by saying, Judge Koch, I was at the meeting, here's what happened.
Right. I mean, it becomes a partnership. When you partner with people,
right.
It's not a friendship. It's not a, it can develop into a friendship, but if you partner first in these different entities, it's not a competition.
Well, we agreed, Mark, that the election was over. The people spoke. It's time to deliver.
Yeah, we got to work. It's time to go to work. Yeah. You speak about the election too. One of your other talking points is the city race being a bipartisan. Could you talk a little bit more about that and how that plays in? Because you really do. Once you're elected, I got it, the Republican, the Democrat, all that.
Right.
It's out that right now. It's about the city. And same.
I held office as a Democrat in the early '80s as PVA. But anyway, to get back onto your point. My concern, looking at it through the lens of our community in Brandenburg, is this. It is very difficult to get someone to run for a city council spot. There are years when we have 6 people running for 6 spots. From a practical standpoint, and with no political agenda, I would say this, that a primary would complicate that situation. And I don't claim to understand the statewide dynamic. I would digress and say that as far as school systems, of course, Dr. Martin could speak for himself.
Sure.
But as an observer, I tend to shy away from fixing things that aren't broke. And I know the community is not holding its collective breath to say, what does Mayor Claycomb think about this? That would be a little bit disingenuous. But the reality of it is what we have here, and we have a great school system.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. It has worked very well in a nonpartisan manner. And I say that only as a member of the community. So those 2 reasons, and although there are probably just as many counter reasons, and when I talked to Representative Tate, she did explain one thing. She said, what I need you to understand is this bill was more about initiating a dialogue about this than it was trying to say, we're going to run this through. And so if you think about that, There's not anything wrong with an open and honest dialogue. My initial reaction is, oh my goodness, we don't need this. How will I ever get anybody run for council next year? Because that's a 2-year term.
Right.
But that's my perspective, although it is localized.
There's things like that and I don't disagree, even though, we're part of the Republican Party and all that. And so, yes, I mean, obviously it's our job as part of the party to try to recruit and things like that. So it could help in that way, in that regard. But at the same time, it does complicate it. It makes it very, very complicated because now we got to go find 6 more people to run,
right?
Or more. But I think that there's probably room for some improvement in that system, somewhat. I mean, like we said earlier, there's always room for improvement in things.
Well, and the other thing that I particularly like about the nonpartisan label of the mayor, it allows me to tell it like it is.
Mm-hmm.
The truth doesn't need an explanation.
Right.
When I say that last year, for example, because of Senator Meredith and Representative Tate and the judge in the fiscal court, we received $2.5 million in Brandenburg. No one can say, or they say it, I can't stop them, well, he's doing that because of political reasons. The truth is just the truth. I sat in on a meeting where Senator Meredith and Representative Tate told Mayor Joyner, Mayor, we will get you $2.5 million. Now, it became complicated because it didn't mention Brandenburg in the legislation in House Bill 1. Senator Meredith and Representative Tate reached out to fiscal court and said, these were our intentions. We wanted Brandenburg to have 2.5 of the $10 million for the county.
I was there that day. She sat in that fiscal court.
Oh, were you?
To make sure that they distributed the monies accordingly.
Because, so when I say that, it's not because I have an ulterior political motive. It is just the truth.
That's right.
And that shouldn't need any defense. And I mean, $2.5 million is a big deal to Brandenburg.
It is. Well, and adding the label, though, does, like you said, or at least what you were alluding to, is, it becomes that was a Republican thing because the Republican, they're just doing it for the election purposes. Right?
Well, to the Republican benefit, I will say this: we're always about not raising taxes.
I understand.
So if we can get $2.5 million because we have to satisfy a need, because we are a growing community,
right? Whether
it's Brandenburg proper or all of Meade County together, based off the comprehensive plan, we got to grow. There's no option here. You're talking about it. Another talking point, and I don't want to keep bouncing around, but the jobs in Nucor, they're coming. They're going to need a place to live, and most people like to live close to where they work. They don't want to have the big commute. But Meade County offers both. You can have the rural setting, or you can have the city setting. Go ahead.
I was in an economic development meeting.
Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. And I asked Johnny Jacobs with Nucor after the meeting. I said,
"Love that guy."
Yeah. What's not to like?
Yeah, I know.
I'm all about Nucor. Heck, I got sued over Nucor.
I know.
Anyway,
but that was we got called liars about that too.
Okay.
But anyway, go ahead.
But anyway, to get back on point, I said, Johnny, what would it take? What would our community need to make people want to call Meade County home? And he said very humbly and honestly that for people who want a rural flavoring, Meade County sells itself. For people who want a little bit more, and he meant no disrespect to any of our businesses, said, we need another grocery store.
Yeah.
He said, we need a higher tier restaurant. He said, I patronize all of them. We need maybe a little higher quality motel.
Oh, I was going to ask you about that too.
Right.
Because not only do you need a higher quality hotel, half of E-Town is booked.
Right.
Fort Knox is booming.
Right.
And I love Muldrow, but that when military come here in TDY, they're looking for that Hampton Inn or that Holiday Inn.
And they're really making a mistake by not considering Golden Manor Motel because but there is an assumption that if they don't have a website, but Golden Manor Motel, that Sue Carol Cummings.
Sue Carol, I know it.
Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Right.
But they don't show up on DTS when they book their travel.
I understand.
And that's what I'm saying. But Brandenburg.
Yeah, because they're an independent.
Yeah,
Right.
but you get Brandenburg, a nice IHG or a Hampton Inn with that high end.
And Golden Manor is just as good as
Absolutely.
I'm going on a tangent here.
Oh, yeah.
But it was nice to see that population that's here for a week long TDY at
Right.
Fort Knox come stay in Brandenburg and pilot our restaurants.
How nice would it be to have something overlooking the river?
Yeah. Oh,
You know,
yeah.
just-
Well, and then the other thing that
Get me excited
Mr.
here.
Jacobs mentioned was, contrary to what you might think, and we all know this is me talking, the housing market has taken its breath. It's cooled. 7% interest rates have had a hand in that.
Yeah.
We said, contrary to what you think, there is still a critical shortage of housing.
Oh, absolutely.
There is.
I know that right now.
Right.
If you got the Kentucky Living, recently came out. It talked about the number of homes that Meade County REC, and not everything in Meade County is Meade RECC. It is also LG&E, but they're maxed out based on the number of homes that are available in Meade County and the number of homes that have power going to them. And we're supposed to grow by 400. Where are these coming? Yeah, where?
Well, and the number that's tossed about, and I forget over how many years our population will double.
Yes.
I wish I could remember the numbers. But
Yeah, because we talked to when we talked
about
to
birthing rates and everything else. 400 households. Sorry, go Mark.
I was gonna say when we talked to Nancy Tate and Senator Meredith, it's been months ago now, but we were talking about what we were talking about was was the income tax, right?
Right.
So their goal, the legislature's goal is to get us to a zero income tax in Kentucky, like a Tennessee model. But they do not, and they're insistent on not raising like sales tax. Right. Now they're broadening the tax base in the sales tax because there's been a lot of things over the years that are generally not taxed when you purchase them. So they're opening it up in those doors, but because that's the only way it's going to work.
Right.
But they do that so that they don't have to raise the rate. And their thought is that if Kentucky can get 1 million more residents, and it's growing, and it's been growing over the last couple of years. But if they get to 1 more million, they'll generate enough money off of sales tax revenue and things like that. Your personal property taxes and things like that to compensate for no income tax.
Now, my concern about that is quite simply that I see the need to try to recover, and I realize we're accumulating taxpayer dollars, but the need to say, we're not going to always have this federal money falling from heaven like manna that I probably could buy in. It doesn't matter whether I buy in or not, but I could probably fully buy in if we could accumulate a significant rainy day fund like Indiana had that helped them sustain themselves through hard times. That's my concern about all of it.
So I did a lot of tax research before I retired. Like, what state do I want to live in? I mean, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, all at the top.
Kentucky didn't make the list?
No, Kentucky made the list.
Okay.
Here I am.
Okay, all right.
But it only made the list because of proximity and distance to travel for family.
For your benefits that you've earned?
For my benefits that I've earned. And I had greater benefits by going to those other states. But, like, when you look at Tennessee could, like, if the federal government crashed, Tennessee, its own industry and economy could survive over 15 years without federal aid.
Wow.
And they're a non-tax. And these are all things that you uncover when you start digging. Kentucky, too, at some point, depending on other policies and safeguards, to your point, could also be in that same situation as long as we continue to grow.
Right.
But it goes back to a point you said earlier. We can't always do the same thing because we've always done it that way.
Right. And that's if that's the default position, we have never done it that way. One of the things that's discouraging to me when I think about retirees through the Kentucky retirement system, and I think I'm pretty accurate on what I'm saying.
If not, we'll go fact check it
That's
later.
fine. That's fine. our retirees that retired through the state retirement system, to the best of my knowledge, have not had a raise since 2009.
Right.
It concerns me because no raise since 2009. We have a retirement system that's shaky. And
to say the least.
And to be very kind, because in years past, the legislature never did what it was supposed to do.
To protect those pensions.
No.
They don't give the city of Brandenburg a choice, or Meade County, you will pay this employer part.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they have, it's been fully funded for the last 6 years or so, 8 years, something like that.
Well,
So, I mean, they funded that year.
That year. They haven't
it's
gone back
so
for past
far behind.
transgressions.
But
Yeah.
they're trying to figure out how to get there.
Right.
And, that's why. Well, I don't want to get into the politics
Yeah.
of it, but that's why, that's part of what happened to Matt Bevin, right?
Yeah.
It was like he was trying to rip the Band-Aid off and get in there and probably rightly so in a lot of ways, but communication is a big thing.
Right.
So we can leave it at that, I think. But I want to get to one thing that's on this list that's hopefully it's the same thing you were going to.
I was going to say, speaking of updating policies, but go ahead.
No, I want because we only have about 5 minutes left.
Is that all?
Talk about the sidewalk project.
The sidewalk project is underway as we speak. That portion is closed. That was a project that Mayor Joyner gave birth to. The sidewalk project will probably take about 2 months to unfold. We have some important dates coming up. We have April 20th, which is Buttermilk Falls Trail Day.
April 22nd?
April 22nd. Thank you, Steve. And we have May the 20th, which is our bicentennial celebration.
Right.
We have
At the
that
River
going
Park.
on at the river. That's right.
And Meade County Chamber is heavily involved in that as well.
Absolutely,
It's like
that's right.
220 years, or what is it? Is that right?
I'm not sure.
200 years?
200 years.
200
Bicentennial.
years,
This
that's
is the 200.
That's right.
Kathy and I were just at the river last night, and they have the dates for Brandenburg and for Meade County down there on the on the post down there. And a cute story, I'll tell you about that in a minute. But yeah, so it's going to be closed from Broadway.
It's going to be closed from Broadway
down to Decatur.
Down to Decatur in the first phase. Mm-hmm.
Now that's where they're taking the corner out and all that.
Well, actually, no. The original project was going to take the curve out. It was anticipated it would come in at about $450,000. It came back at $1.4 million. Now we have a scaled back project for only $935,000.
Only.
But the city's share is $215,000, and quite frankly, maybe it's an over rationalization, but our thoughts as a council were that we're getting all this for $215,000. Let's don't focus on the $935,000. That is an obscene amount of money to put sidewalks just down one side all the way to the bottom of the hill, and to in fact start where the buildings are on the left side and go down.
Gotcha.
But the good news is that we deferred this. We told the state we don't want to take that out of your inventory just yet.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up this project by, in fact, letting the state come in and put it up to specs, make it look nice, and we'll take it into the city street system. So that'll be the way that we'll finish out the project. But it is a ridiculous amount of money.
I'm having a heart attack over it.
Yeah.
Well, it
Concrete
is,
prices
but
have gone
it's
up
so
much.
expensive now.
Yeah, inflation is just ripped. It's just
Well-
like building 2 years ago.
Right.
One of the things that slowed us down and growing is the lumber prices. Most
So many
contractors didn't even want to
Yeah.
dig in because it was tough.
Lots of people put decks on the back of their house when they got their COVID money.
Well, the problem's
I
been
didn't use
compounded
mine
by
for
people
co-
who
my
say,
COVID money went into-
I don't care what it costs, can you get it?
Yeah.
And so it's ridiculous, but that's the situation we've been in.
Yeah. Well, I got one more issue. You said you had something you wanted to say about the senior citizen building and related issues, and then also the updating personnel policy. We were talking about policy and getting updates. You're talking about pensions, but now what is the issue with the updating personnel?
Well, our most recent personnel policy update occurred in 1995. It refers to the top wage that I'm authorized to pay is $10.32 an hour.
Oh, that's not going to get you anybody.
Not much.
Especially the way people are trying to get people hired.
So we are working in conjunction with the staff to go through and to get that updated, get that taken care of because it needs to be done. Senior citizens, I hope I'm not pulling a pin out of a grenade and lobbing a grenade, but the community...
Cover! No, I'm just kidding.
The community raised the money for that building. And one of the things that was a bitter disappointment for me when I went to my first Lincoln Trail ad meeting, and I found out we're the only county that doesn't have a senior citizens building that's operational 5 days a week. And I know firsthand what a senior citizen center can mean because my mother-in-law,
sure,
it was an integral part of her life. She was there Monday through Friday, 9 to 3. They had a hot meal. Something's got to give on it. And it's just not right when I know that there could be in excess of $250,000 available for programs, and the best they can do is put some vouchers in play here. I'm not trying to step on toes, but the reality of it is something's got to change. City, county government do not want to take it over. We're not trying, but we should not be out looking for a building when our community raised the money for that building. I may be stepping on toes, but I can't help it. It's a disgrace, an absolute disgrace, that it's open only on Tuesdays for what's referred to as the best cheeseburger in town, and Friday night for dances.
So who owns the property?
The Meade County Senior Citizens Incorporated, which is a nonprofit organization in good standing with the Secretary of State that is tax exempt. It's being handled as if it were private property. It is not private property.
Like a Moose Lodge or like a VFW?
Yeah. When you raise money for a public purpose,
that's right,
then it is public. And Judge Koch and I are like-minded that we know it could be more, and we're willing to, this is beginning to be budget time, we would put money in play to help stabilize. They should not have to worry about how to raise money for insurance and utilities and maintenance, but it needs to be so much more. Seniors, and I have to give Chad Hobbs credit for this. We talked, and I said, Chad, I know I'm a senior. He said, well, Brian, you're a functional senior citizen. I said, thank you very much, Chad. That's a great way without appearing vain.
Sure.
But I'm a functional senior citizen who doesn't need that.
But you know what? Today, though, most functional senior citizens are making it past 80. I mean,
yeah.
And 90, and even then they're functional. But what's functional? You know what I mean?
Well, that's all relative. But I prefer to think I'm functional.
I'm not supposed to talk about the president, but I mean, I'm just saying that's even questionable. But go ahead.
No matter what you think, we need to pray for our president.
Yes,
because God help
absolutely.
us if something happened to him, and that's all I'll say about that.
I can concur with that statement all day long. But anyway, go ahead.
But anyway,
I digressed.
I do too. Martha's not here to give me the look.
She's doing it through the screen.
Well,
she's eyeballing you.
She's probably watching Me TV on the antenna.
That's all right.
But we need to do better.
Okay.
We have an obligation. If you've read The Messenger, you see their editorial focus.
Yeah.
It is a disgrace. There's no way to camouflage it or paint it something else. We should and we must do better. And it's time to I thought that loosening the grip would be enough. No.
Yeah.
There are issues raised. Well, it doesn't have a commercial kitchen. Not needed. The issue that you put $1 back in if you can afford it, and that has to go back to the program that made it possible and not to the local senior citizens. What a ridiculous arguing point.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to pick fights, so help me, I'm not. But I don't have the patience to watch nonsense and just hope over time that people get to the right place. If we can gently push, or push as hard as we need to, and put money to back up, we have seniors that are hungry not for necessarily for the food, but for the people, social interaction.
Yeah, I would say that's probably more important than because you can get food. There's a lot of places to get food.
Right.
There's a lot of places that are the food pantries and things like that. Ironically, on Tuesday night, or coincidentally on Tuesday night. But but like you were saying,
my mother-in-law Dorothy Nunn, it was an integral part of her life, and Martha and I are both very appreciative of the fact that she put her focus. At 90 years old, she'd say, "Those old people need my help. I've got to go up there."
Yeah.
They played cards. They were fed meals.
Yeah.
It was a drop-off point when Panera had extra. Let's take it there.
Sure.
That's what the money was raised for this to be. And
it sounds like a lack of vision within the organization. I mean, I don't know if I don't expect you to go there, but I'm going to go there and say that, if you have a vision, then you understand what the steps are to get to that vision, right? You create missions and things, and you start. It drives the train.
Right.
And I think that, it sounds like, the leadership is maybe not as focused as they used to be.
And I understand if this were private property, but it isn't really.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Well, no, I think it's a great initiative. I definitely think that you've got a lot on your plate.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. I mean, and everything we talked about is in Brandenburg, right? And so.
And you like the idea of a dog park, right?
Yeah.
Let's put that on your plate too.
I'll table that and make it, and I'll bring it up.
Well, actually, it's on Steve's plate
it's on my plate.
a route to get to that.
Well, I'm going to do the best I can for the 46 months left on this sentence.
Well, listen, Mayor, I got to tell you, I'm impressed.
I am too.
I think that the initiative that you're trying to do will probably help enable that comprehensive plan, maybe even project it faster.
Well,
and I know that Troy's trying to get to a vision that everyone can see, and I think it sounds like you're playing a very integral part in that.
Judge Koch and I share a lot of common things, but one of them is we both have jobs that arguably we didn't need. And I have learned how to pronounce his name and not mess up.
Yeah.
And when the sign said he's the real thing, I'm telling you, he is the real thing.
Thank you. That means a lot. I know he'll appreciate hearing that tonight.
It's not just talking points. It's the truth. And the truth doesn't need an adjective unless it says meat, I guess.
Yeah. That's right. Mayor, I want to say thank you for being on the show tonight. I'm going to turn it over to Mark. Close us out, Mark, and
I gotta
bring in our few events.
I got a couple things coming up. One, our meeting on our regular Republican Party meeting on Monday is probably going to it's going to probably be moved. So look for that communication out there. It's Troy Koch's, Judge Koch is having his town hall out in Flaherty.
That's right.
On Monday. And so to be respectful for that, I think it's easier for us to move our meeting out. And so we'll probably move that to Wednesday of that week.
So we have our live remote there. Hopefully we get the stuff running this time. So you can
absolutely
tune in live.
We do have our Lincoln Day dinner coming up April 25th. Right now it's scheduled to be out at Robert's Family Farm. And if there's a change or anything like that there, we'll let you know. But for right now, I think that we're going to stay there. The banquet is next week. Next Thursday is the
Meade County Banquet.
The Meade County Chamber of Commerce banquet. So if you're, I know I'm going to be there. Steve's going to be there. Are you going to be there, Mayor?
It may be past my bedtime.
Oh, when you have one of those,
Right.
But anyway, that's all I have for this week, I think.
Well, thank you for having a functional senior citizen as a guest tonight.
Well, thanks for coming. I mean, we really enjoyed having you.
Well,
I always enjoy talking with you, and I think you and I didn't really talk a whole lot until the last 6 months or so.
Well, and I've quit asking now, which Burnett group are you part of?
Yeah. Obviously, I'm not from anyone around here, really.
Hey,
but
that's all right. I'm not a native either.
Yeah.
Well, hey, everybody, listen, it's been a great show tonight. Thanks for tuning in to us. Mayor, again, thanks for being on.
Hey.
Watch it later, play it back. Mayor's got some great talking points.
Like and share, guys. Like and share.
Yeah,
subscribe to our channel.
Absolutely.
One last thing. We will not be on next Thursday because of the chamber. So look for us the following week.
And then hopefully very soon you will see that live demo at the new chamber location, which makes up one of those big land masses you were talking about in Brandenburg proper. But anyway, listen, it's been great. Love hosting this every week, and we will see you again soon.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.